the Sam Houston dueling pistols.
Yes.
Which I think are such a cool artifact. It's a pair of German-made flintlock pistols, and they were donated by a nephew or a great-nephew of Sam Houston. If anybody's listening, the answer is not to just digitize it all. Because as archivists, yes, we want to digitize that because it'll make it more available to you, and we will continue to do that. But we still want to preserve that original.
Hello, and welcome to Galveston Unscripted. In this episode today, I sit down with the director of the Rosenberg Library, Mr. Mike Miller. Mike and I discuss the 12-decade-long history of the Rosenberg Library, as well as a few other library-related topics. Mike is also an author who's written several books, one of which relates to one of Texas' earliest cookbooks, and another on the history of hockey in Texas. You are sure to enjoy this episode on one of Galveston's great institutions, the Rosenberg Library. Without further ado, let's hop right into this episode with Mr. Mike Miller, director of the Rosenberg Library. The Rosenberg is the premier, place to research history here in Galveston. So I wanted to have you on and just kind of talk to you about the history of the library, if whatever you know about it, and then kind of what is going on today, and talk a little bit about research, libraries, and what you guys have to offer.
Certainly. So a little bit about the library itself. It's kind of like a dual history because you talked about the research side.
Yeah.
So there's the research part, and then there's like the public library part, which overlaps some. But
and you can adjust this wherever you.
It's what I talk with my hands too. So
that's okay. Yeah, you can move it around.
That's the Italian in me coming out.
That's good. That's perfect.
Do that. As the Rosenberg Library, we got our start from Henry Rosenberg, who was a Swiss merchant in Galveston. He came here. I'm in terms of being a historian, I'm really bad with dates.
That's okay.
I'm not a historian that bothers with dates because that's why we have Wikipedia and phones. So we can look up dates. It's the story that matters.
You're 100% right.
Yeah. So he was a very successful merchant, made a whole lot of money, and died childless. And so he had all this money to leave. And in his will, he set aside portions of money for certain causes around Galveston. There's the Rosenberg fountains. I think it's about 17 of them left around. Few of them still in their original location. Many of them have been moved, including the one that's at the library. Mm-hmm. That's not where it was originally placed. It was moved there. The orphans' home was funded with Rosenberg money, but the biggest chunk of his estate was set aside to create a public library for the city of Galveston, and that was Henry's wish, that there was a place for people to come to learn, to grow, to hear lectures, to have access to literature and information, and that was really important for him to do that. So that's the bulk of his money. It was at that time. It was 1895. It was $600,000.
Oh my gosh!
So factor in the inflation stuff. I know there's internet calculators. We could run that and figure out what that number is today.
That's millions of dollars
in today's dollars. But that was the genesis of the library. In his will, he also said that nothing could happen for 5 years or 4 or 5 years, because he wanted the money to sit and grow.
Oh,
and
wow!
And then before they would form what's called the Rosenberg Library Association, which is the governing body of the library, and so they did form in 1900, and they started the process to figure out how to build a library, start a library. Of course, things got delayed when the storm hit, because I did think they incorporated the association before the storm, if I remember the dates correctly. Then of course everything got stalled and delayed with the storm, and then they started meeting again, put out bids for a building, whatnot, and they erected the building that we're in now in 1904 as the Rosenberg Library. But our history actually dates earlier. In 1871, the Chamber of Commerce, of which Henry Rosenberg was a member, and was I don't have any verified documents that says he was a part of this effort, but I believe he was a part of this effort to create what was called the Galveston Mercantile Library. And by its name, Mercantile was a library put together by the area merchants. It was a subscription library, so people had to pay an annual subscription to be a member and be able to go in and use it. At start, and that was a pretty typical way that the library started. You saw that all across the country. Within a couple of years or less, It became a free library, so they dropped the subscription, and it became a free library. And then over time, from 1871 to 1904, it went back and forth between the chamber running it and the city running it. So at one time, the city agreed to put up some money, and they ran it, and then the city stopped caring about it, so the chamber stepped in to keep it going, and it just kind of went back and forth. But at this time, it was never really managed too well. Just people didn't want to invest a lot into it. Is really what it came down to. And so when the Rosenberg Library opened in 1904, there was a competing, was called the Galveston Free Library at that time, and it was run by the city at that time. And so the city approached the Rosenberg Library Association and said, we don't need two libraries. So why don't you take over operations of the Galveston Free Library, and the city will commit some funds to keep it going, and you can, the Rosenberg Library Association can take over that public library duties that you usually see in municipalities. And so we date ourselves back to 1871 because we claim that library's history since we assumed their operations. We brought their collection over.
Yeah.
I say we, I wasn't there at the time. And took over that. And so that's the kind of the genesis of the Rosenberg Library. I'm going to pause there on the library history a minute and talk about how we started the Galveston, Texas History Center, which is the research arm that you were referring to.
Which just so everyone knows, I use that for most of my research, and photos and things like that on the videos that we do. So. Yeah.
And hopefully you credit us.
I do.
I
do.
I know you. I
leave the watermarks on there.
I know you do. But I have to say that as the director of the library, that's my job. Just in case my board is listening, they know I'm doing my part here. So at the same time that the Galveston Mercantile Library started, there was an organization that was created in Galveston called the Texas Historical Foundation. And it went by different names at different times. And when it started, essentially it was a group of guys, and it was guys. I mean, I know it's very patriarchal, but that's who was running things at that time. They were acknowledging that a lot of the people who had lived through the Texas Revolution and the early Republic days of when Texas was an independent republic, that they were starting to die off and move off like that, and no one was making an effort to preserve their history. And so they formed this organization for the sole purpose of reaching out to these people, collecting documents, collections, stories to create an early Texas history collection. And they off and on, they were active, inactive, active, inactive, and the collection just kind of floated around Galveston throughout the first 20, 30 years. When the Great Storm hit, the library and the Historical Foundation were both officed in the Scottish Rite building. Just down the street here. They were on the top floor, and that building was, of course, damaged, like as most of the island was. It wasn't completely destroyed. The library side was spared. The side where the historical group was, that's the side where the wall collapsed and whatnot. And so they lost a significant part of that collection.
Oh man.
And the guys that were running it at the time, during the early 1900s, recognized that they weren't the best equipped to be managing and protecting these records. They were also that's when you started to see their focus to the built environment. So this organization is the predecessor to what's now the Galveston Historical Foundation, GHF. They renamed themselves like the Galveston Historical Society. I mean, again, they went through different names at the time before they finally realized, okay, we're going to be focused on the built environment in historic buildings, and maybe we don't need to be collecting paper and protecting that. And so shortly after the Rosenberg opened, this organization approached the library and said, can we deposit our collections at the library to keep them safe? And within a year after that deposit, they came back and said, well, why don't you just own them? They're now your collection. And that is the genesis of what is now the Galveston and Texas History Collection.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And that's also why our collection has a statewide focus for for antebellum Texas because of the collecting efforts of that early organization, and we had such a phenomenally rich early Texas history collection that came with that, and so we still build onto that, but we don't collect Texana after the Civil War. Essentially.
Oh, I see. Okay,
Yeah,
so
so
the focus is pre-Civil War Texas.
for Texas, and then Galveston from prehistory to present day. So it's the city in Galveston County. I mean, we will sometimes reach out. Of course, there's some of the other county cities have their own museums and libraries that collect as well. And so we try to play nice with each other.
Of course,
as we should. But the Texas stuff is early Texas up through the end of the Civil War.
Yeah. And you guys have some pretty amazing artifacts in the library on top of written accounts of early Galveston, early Texas. You guys have old maps, dating back to, the 15, 16, 1700s.
We do. We have the
really
first
cool
map that's known that identified Galveston Bay as Galveston Bay. It's a early 18th century, 1722. It's a map. It's a French map.
That's how it got the name St. Bernard's Bay, I believe. They called it St. Bernard's Bay before Galveston Bay. By a French explorer. Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah,
but so talking about the archives and things like that, you guys are still collecting up to the present day. Are you guys like inundated with people trying to deliver stuff to the library, like, here, take this, store it?
I would say inundated. It comes in waves, I think. Inundated is probably not the appropriate word, but when we do get, at least, every month for sure, we get a few donations. I did forget to mention there's a third kind of arm of the library, is our museum.
Yes.
Which is under the special collections department of the library, oversees the archives and the museum. But in the information world, we're what is referred to as a GLAM. And GLAM stands for Gallery, Library, Archive, and Museum.
Oh, okay.
And so those are like the four pillars of the information library world, and very few institutions have all four in one. There's many institutions that are two or three of those, perhaps. And so we're kind of unique that we have all four under one. And for a city of Galveston size, I think the last census estimate was like 55,000 or 58,000 in that range. For a city of 58,000 people to have, a GLAM the size and scope of what we have here, it's truly amazing. It's what brought me to Galveston, was the ability to be a part of this, because I think it truly is unique.
Yeah.
And I interrupted. You were asking.
Oh, no, it's fine. It's fine. No, it's fine. It really is, for, like you said, like for a city the size of Galveston to be able to have it. That's why every time I go in there and every time I'm doing research, I'm like, I cannot believe, like, the Galveston and Texas History Center, the Rosenberg Library, it is here in Galveston. And going inside that library, especially the old section, the 1904 building, the original part, it's really, really cool to see how fascinating that is. So the original building, of course, is still there, and then it's had the addition onto the back.
The Moody Wing.
The Moody Wing,
which was built and opened in 1971. So that is now more than 50 years old. So it's actually now part of our National Register listing. It's actually always listed, but it didn't qualify as the historic part of the library because it didn't hit that. It needed to hit that 50-year mark, but it did a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So, now that's part of the historical building. It's really just kind of it's two buildings that are kind of mushed together. And you've walked it, so you know that the Moody Wing is 4 floors, and the Rosenberg, the original, is 3, and so they had to get kind of creative to how to make things match up. I'm sure it was really, really smart design at the time. Now we're kind of like, oh, this is kind of interesting. How do we get to this floor? How do we get here? But it essentially doubled the size of the library itself. I think it allowed the library to continue to build and grow the Galveston Texas History Center collection, because that was originally in just one room, and then stuff up in the attic. And then of course, library collections, those get refreshed regularly. one thing that libraries do is, there's a new book out, by a real popular author like John Grisham or something like that. Libraries tend to get lots of copies of the new book because there's a lot of demand. And so we want to make sure we have enough to satisfy that demand, but then as soon as the next big one comes out, that demand wanes, and then we'll take, those extra copies out of circulation and, either sell them in the book sale or recycle them if they've been worn out, depending on how well loved they were by the readers.
Yeah.
And so that collection is constantly refreshing and changing, and we don't have any kind of mandate to be an archive for popular fiction or anything like that.
Yeah.
But we do on the archive side. We're not refreshing that collection. We're not taking things out of circulation and selling or recycling it. Our goal, our mandate is to save that history. So that collection is always growing.
Yeah.
And so that's the challenge. That's the challenge that all archives face across the country is how do you manage that space? And if anybody's listening, the answer is not to just digitize it all. Because as archivists, yes, we want to digitize that because it'll make it more available to you, and we will continue to do that. But we still want to preserve that original, because the goal is to preserve the record in its most original state that we can.
What are some of the pain points with digitizing things? Because I know it for people who are doing research, it could be kind of frustrating where you can find maybe 90% of what you're looking for digitized on the Galveston, Texas History Center website. But then there's some stuff, it's like, this has not been digitized yet. You actually got to go into the library.
There's a few, I guess I'll call them choke points in the workflow. The first one is the actual capture process itself. Right now, this will be changing very, very soon. We use old flatbed technology, which is what most people are familiar with for digitizing. But flatbeds are incredibly inefficient.
Is it like a big scanner?
Yeah, it's like a scanner. You put it down, you press a button, then you have to wait 2-3 minutes for it to capture. To capture at the resolution that we're trying to capture at, so that, because our goal is that we only want to do that once, because the process of digitizing is harmful to the original. But basically, anytime you touch or expose a piece of paper to light or anything like that, you're causing damage.
Yeah.
And our goal is to minimize that as much as possible, because it's damage that's cumulative and it's irreversible. Case in point, I was just talking to a state archivist at a conference last week. The famous Travis letter that always comes, talked about. You can barely read the original now; it is so faded, and that's just because of the cumulative light exposure over time since William Travis wrote that letter in 1836 at the Alamo. And so, of course, the state archives, is very cautious about allowing that out and to be visible by any light, just because they know that every time you do that, it's one more little notch in that damage level. So that's what we face with digitizing. We are in the process of building a new digital lab in the archives using a camera-based capture system, which goes from a process with lots of lights and stuff that takes anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes to capture, and maybe 10 minutes if it's a big object like an architectural drawing or a map, to at the click of a button. And then the software that comes with the system does a lot of the post. You can program it to do a lot of that's post processing, so we can increase our efficiency and capture 100-fold or more.
Yeah.
That's the easy fix. In terms of workflow. The hard part is, in order you to find it. So when you search, the catalog or you search other archives, there's what's called metadata. That's all the descriptions behind that object. So whether it's a photograph, whether it's a manuscript, someone has to describe and put in a system, some kind of database system, all those words that are now discoverable when you put in a keyword. You have a box where you type in a search. That search has to go somewhere and match up against words somewhere to find that object. Right now, most of that is a human being has to go and type, it has to input that, and so that's the cataloging process of the digitization, and it's labor, it's time intensive, and there has not been an easy solution created to speed that up. AI technology, I think, is going to be promising in that to be not a replacement for cataloging, but I think there's things that can happen with some AI technologies that will allow that process to be improved and more efficiency. It's still going to require a person. We all know, if anybody's ever played on ChatGPT, you know, you don't always get the best stuff out of it. And so you're always going to need that person to do quality control. But there's a lot of, potential promise with that, particularly with some of the efforts that are happening to create tools to read handwriting and cursive. Because so like a typed document, you can OCR it. Then that OCR text now becomes searchable. And so your keyword search can find that, and you might be able to find a document that way. Doesn't do that with cursive writing.
Yeah, I can't even read that old handwriting, so I can't imagine training an AI model to do it.
But there's a couple large institutions that are attempting to do some work with that, and some have had some success. And so, yes.
Okay, so those are some of the pain points with digitizing some things in the archives. What are some of the most surprising things to you when you first arrived at the library that you guys had in the archives? Because I was really surprised when I was talking to Sean. He was telling me some of the stuff that you guys have. I was like, there's no way you guys have that.
Yeah. So the first thing I wanted to mention is actually not an archival object. It's a museum object or a pair of objects. And you talked about this, I think, before we were recording, was the Sam Houston dueling pistols.
Yes.
Which I think are such a cool artifact. So it's a pair of German-made flintlock pistols. And they were donated to the library by a nephew or great nephew of Sam Houston, a guy named Sam Pinard, who donated some other things as well to the library. To me, it's just fascinating. They were, near as I can tell, they've never been fired. So I don't, although Sam Houston was involved in a couple duels in his lifetime, I think that predated this gift. And there's a little plate on it that says, "From your Cincy friends, 1836." And as near as we could tell is that these were probably a gift from one of the volunteer groups that came to help with the Texas Revolution. Probably never fought, because I know most of those groups that were formed, there's a lot of militia volunteer groups that formed in the United States to come to Texas to help with the Revolution. Most of them arrived after San Jacinto, and so there was no need for them. They didn't get involved in the armed conflict, and they milled about. Some of them probably tried to lie to get their 640-acre veteran land bounty or whatever.
I was here, I promise. I fought.
Because there's no evidence of any land grafting in Texas's history at all. So as near as we could tell, that's probably what they was. Probably some volunteer militia that came from Cincinnati, Ohio, and it was just a gift that they gave to him. That's our guess. There's no documentation that says that. One thing I was fascinated about, and I think most people who do any property research in Galveston knows about this, I did not know about it until I got here, were the records of the Galveston Insurance Board, which for a significant part of the 19th and 20th centuries, the Galveston Insurance Board collected tons of documentation on just about every single structure built on the island. Date of construction, architect, builder, information about the owner, information about the design, information about renovations and changes. This kind of collection doesn't exist in other cities. So Galveston is, I think, so fortunate. I think it also helps with all of our historic preservation work and all the work that GHF does, is that we have access to all this information to properties. I think anything built from the post Civil War up to the 1970s, there's probably a file on it in this collection.
Wow!
I'll tell you. I was just floored that it existed. So one of the first things I did is I looked up my house that I bought when I moved to the island, and also learned that the appraisal district had the construction of my house. I live in Fish Village as 1964, which kind of matched as with a lot of the houses there. But when I looked it up in this record, I found that it was actually built in 1951.
Oh my gosh!
It was one of the first houses built in Fish Village.
Oh wow!
Yeah, not the first, but it was one of the earliest houses in Fish Village. The reason why the appraisal district has a 64 is my house was originally a wood frame house, and in 64 they bricked it and they built an addition to attach the garage to the house. And so that's where, and I learned all that because all this information is in those insurance board records.
Man, I'm gonna have to go look up my house now.
Yeah. And I was even able to go into my attic and I could see the old construction, just because the addition, it was definitely a DIY project.
Like most Galveston housing projects.
And so, hopefully the guy who did the work was not listening. But let's just say that, it wasn't up to any kind of contemporary professional standards.
So how do we access that? Like if I want to come in and research my house, do we have to come into the library or is that digitized?
It's not digitized.
Okay.
It's just far too voluminous. But you come in, or you could call and or email the reference staff at the Galveston, Texas History Center, and just tell them your address and say, I would like, to see if you have a file, on my address.
Man, okay.
Yeah, and the files aren't organized by address, but they have that. They have a cross reference to how the files are organized, so they can get to the folder that will have the documentation on your particular address if there is documentation.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So that, to me, that was just it was pleasantly shocking that we had a collection of that value. So any realtor listening to this, if you're trying to sell an old property, come to the Galveston, Texas History Center. We can hook you up with all kinds of information that you can use to help sell that property.
That's perfect. That's perfect. So the next thing I wanted to ask you about was kind of about the collection of books and libraries today. So are libraries across the country, I mean, are they strong and as used today as they were, 50, 100 years ago?
I would say yes. I would say in many ways more so, but libraries of today are very different, and they serve a very different purpose in many ways than libraries of 50 to 100 years ago. One, books are still important and people still read, and our circulation numbers, and that's the number of items being checked out and checked back in, and our numbers are showing that that's still the case, and those numbers are growing. Interestingly, the American Library Association issued a report recently, or it may have been the Public Library Association, which is a part of ALA, that was studying the behaviors of what we term new adults, the 18 to 30-year-old target range, and that demographic is coming back to the library in droves. And not only are they coming back and using libraries, they're checking out physical items, not necessarily
that's surprising
e-materials. I mean, they are using e-materials as well, obviously, but and so that was a very telling report, but it also talked about barriers that exist just in how libraries have always functioned that makes it harder for that demographic to potentially use the libraries. It was, also very useful for libraries to be thinking about how can you kind of pivot some sources and pivot services to make library services more attractive to that demographic. And that's something that our adult services team is working on. I've challenged them that was their big challenge this year, is like, let's really focus on, what we're doing with that demographic and what can we do to improve. So for instance, we just recently had a program. We were still settled on a title. It was the equivalent of speed dating, but it was for finding new friends.
That is so awesome.
And it's really good. And it's one thing that we're discovering, especially in the pandemic, it created a lot of pockets of isolation. And as human beings, we're social people.
Yeah.
We cannot thrive when we're isolated. But we're also finding that there's a demographic that, because of the pandemic and because of where they were when everything shut down and we were all sent home, we thought it was going to be for a couple of weeks, and it ended up being a lot longer than that. Is not only were those ties broken, but the ability to learn how to make those connections, and not necessarily like really deep friendships that most people have a few of those, but it's just what they call the weak connections, where you have, like, acquaintances, people around town, people that you might hang out with, but those are important. And so we had this program. I'm not sure if Evelina, who's our adult services program, if she came up with the idea or if she borrowed it from another library, because we're all stealing from each other anyway. But it was basically called speed friending, I guess.
Yeah, I love that.
Is an opportunity for bring people together, and you just move around, and you have like 2 minutes to or whatever, and it's just a chance to meet new people and find a way to kind of broaden that circle.
I love that.
Yeah, and it wasn't just for the new adult category. It was all adult ages, but it was specifically, I think, kind of with the eye of encouraging them to come in. So it's things like that.
Yeah.
That and libraries are really becoming like a community hub, and that's really what libraries are about today. Is we're one of the last places left that is truly open to all. I don't have to tell you that we're living in a very polarized world. We're in an election cycle that's very contentious and polarizing, and there's not a lot of public spaces left where you can't avoid that. The public library is being one of those, because our focus and our mission is to be a place for all. Whether you're, I don't even start doing labels, because I think that's just that's unfair, but everybody is welcome. Everybody can use the library, and our goal is to have collections and services and programs that serve all of the Galveston community. Regardless of where you are in life, regardless of where your political leanings are, regardless of your religion or whatever, we want to be able to try to have something for you. Of course, we can't have everything. As the great Stephen Wright comedian said, you can't have everything. Where would you put it? But that is the goal, and that's where libraries are today. So for example, we've got, I know there's a Galveston County Democrats group. They use the library for their meetings. And then we also have this Saturday, the Galveston Republican Party is doing their election canvassing and at the library. And so we've got both ends of the political spectrum. They're both using the library. They're both welcome to use the library, as long as they follow all of our, meeting policies, which they do. I mean, we haven't, but that's the role of the library, is we are truly a democratizing entity. So.
Yeah, so you got, your freedom of expression and speech in the books that you have and offer, and you got your freedom of existence to be able to come in and enjoy the library and use it for whatever purpose, as long as you're following the rules of the library, right?
Sure, yeah. I mean, like any place, you have to. We have a code of conduct. We want people to treat each other and treat the building and treat the collections, kindly. But other than that, that's the only requirement. We don't track what people do in the library. Libraries have always been, a harbinger of, privacy and individual privacy. So for instance, if you check out books, as soon as you bring it back, we have no record that you checked those books out. So we could not. Now, I think in our current system, you could elect if you wanted to save a history for your own, knowledge, because you want to remember, did I read this book already? You could look up on your account, but we don't track that because it's not our job. Our job is to have the materials and make them available. The only time we know that that you've checked out a book is if you still have it checked out, because it's on your record. And it'll be until you bring it back. But beyond that, our job is that but we also protect our customers data, so it's not available. Library information is one of the few classes that's actually even defined in the state code and federal code as protected private information.
Oh, really? Okay.
So like most libraries are government run, usually municipal or county, and of course government records are subject to open records requests. Customer data is not. The only time we would release it is if we had a court order, issued by a judge that said you have to release this for, and then at that point, we would follow the law, because that's what the law says. And it actually happened recently, just because there was a crime in Texas City, I think, and there was some Rosenberg Library property that was found at the crime.
Really?
And they had our barcode on it, which is why the detective reached out to us and asked if they could, have the information tied to it. And I said, we, without a court order, we cannot, divulge any of that information. And then a week later, he sent a court order. I'm like, okay, now I can divulge the information.
Yeah, there you go.
And again, we're not trying to be obstructive. It's just this is a protected class of information. We're just following the law.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense, and it kind of naturally leads me into, what's been going on recently with book bans and things like that, where there are attempted restrictions on what's available at libraries, not just, public libraries, private library, whatever, what's available to read and to access. So, I mean, what is, maybe not your stance, but what is kind of the general...
I'll be happy to share my stance.
Yeah.
If you want.
But and I'll start off with my thing is information and being able to access information regardless of where it is. It's imperative to be able to make decisions to move forward. And that's with anything, with history, with thoughts, with ideas, with expression, and in my opinion.
Yeah. I don't think I can say it any better there, JR. Yeah. I mean, essentially what's happening, it's, there are people who, for many reasons, don't agree with, have problems with certain topics, subjects, and the argument of the push is that because libraries are publicly funded and available to the public, that they have a right or should have a right to dictate what's in that collection, which is very contrary to what libraries are. You mentioned with the whole freedom, to read. There's a whole statement. It's an ALA statement. It's been a guiding principle of libraries, for the last century or more. Is this idea of freedom to read? Is that people have the freedom to read what they want. The people who are trying to get books moved or removed for various reasons, obviously that behavior is contrary to that basic tenet of libraries of this freedom to read. Some of the arguments about is like, we're protecting children because children can find these things, on the shelf. Our stance is that libraries aren't parents. We're different than schools. So schools, there is a legal justification that, during the school hours that school officials are acting as in parentis locus, or the Latin. Public libraries do not do that. That is not our job. It is not our job to tell a parent what they could or could not allow a child to read. If a parent does not want a child to read a book about XYZ topic, amen, that is 100% the parent's right. But it is not that parent's right to prevent another parent from having access to that information if they choose, if that's what they want.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to, is our job as libraries is to try to build a diverse, inclusive collection that reflects the community we serve as well as their information needs. When you do that, you are bound to have something that is going to offend somebody. My personal thought is like that if you are offended by something, good, because now you're thinking. That's how we learn and grow.
100%.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, there are things at the Rosenberg Library that offend me. I'm not going to take and remove them because they're part of the collection. Now, only time I would remove them, and I would do it because I don't do that work, it's my staff that does it, is if it's now either outside of our collective scope or it's not being used. And so, like I said, I mentioned before, libraries are constantly refreshing the collections, whether it's material that's outdated, we want to take the outdated information out and get new updated versions of works, or it's sat on the shelf for 5 years and no one ever checked it out. We might take that out, make room for something else that maybe someone would want. And that's part of trying to find things that the community wants.
Yeah.
But it's not my job to make sure that the collection reflects my views. And it's not the job of somebody else to make the collection reflect only their views. Our job is to try to get a collection that reflects Galveston and what the community of Galveston will like to use out of its library.
Yeah.
And by doing that, by nature, we are going to offend somebody. Yeah. Our goal is not to offend. Our goal is to build a diverse collection, but that's a repercussion of building a diverse collection. As a parent, if you are worried, then stay with them the whole time they're in the library. talk to your kid and say, hey, if you're going to check out a book, bring it to me first.
Yeah.
Let me look at it before you check it out. Let me look at it before you look at it. That's a parent's right. And again, I 100% support parents' rights in that. But that's where it ends.
Yeah.
It's the parent has to step in and be the parent of that child if that's what they would like to do.
Yeah.
And I don't begrudge them that right to do so. I just, if there's another parent that wants to be able to for their child to find that book.
Yeah. Makes sense.
I don't want to take that away either.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
So.
Well, whew.
Yeah.
I'm the same way. Take a little break here.
We could do a whole podcast about
censorship and things like that. So back to a little bit of history here. So whenever let's go back to 1871, the Mercantile Library. So the original library here or one of the original libraries here in Galveston, 1871, it was kind of put together by the businesses down here. And I would assume, I don't know, I haven't done research here, but I would assume that was just to provide information on business, on history, on things like that. Or do you know if they were putting all kinds of books in that collection, or was it? They
were, and it was usually the subscribers could request titles or would vet the titles. Yeah, and it was kind of like what a subscription library sounds like. It was an opportunity for these businessmen, and it wasn't just the businesses; it was the business owners. It was the merchants. Then instead of them all buying their own copies of books, they could go in together, and so it's almost like a co-op in that way. In some ways, for people who know what co-ops are, so that's what it was doing. And it would be newspapers, magazines. So they would do like a subscription, so that then the Mercantile Library would have a subscription to.
The Cincinnati Times or something, right?
And then it would come, and then they could have it, and then they could go sit and read it in the reading room at the Mercantile Library, and then a book collection. And but there also probably was reference collection as well to help them with things that might help them with their businesses instead of each business buying their own copy. They could go in together and start a library, which is why this was a fairly common phenomenon across the country, as you saw. Mercantile libraries popping up in the mid to late 19th century.
Yeah, it makes so much sense, because before you had movies, before you had Netflix, before you had really like big entertainment venues, you would go to the library and read, or go check out a book, or get your hands on a book and sit down for hours and hours and hours and read. Something that I wish I could do these days.
Or there was always like town festivals, things like that for entertainment. Or go to the town hanging.
Right.
It's kind of sad to think about that. That used to be a spectator sport, was to watch people get hanged.
Exactly.
So we have been working with a consultant team headed by Group 4 Architecture out of San Francisco, and they are one of the preeminent library planning firms in the country, which is why we hired them. Doing kind of a deep dive, excuse me, into the library, into our services, into the community to come up with a strategic vision for the next 5 to 20 years for the Rosenberg Library. And this would be, it's kind of a two-part process. We have a strategic plan that we just at our February meeting. February. Just a month ago, the board voted to adopt a new mission, vision, and value statements and 6 strategic goals for the library. And I'm not going to recite them here, but we will be pushing that out very soon, and sometime late spring, early summer, we will be pushing out our a new strategic plan for the library. And this would be kind of our programmatic vision of what the library should be doing, and how we're going to go about achieving that. And it's based a lot on community feedback. We did as well as stakeholder feedback. So lots of meetings with our board and with staff to get their thoughts. But we did focus groups. We did we had a community survey, and if anybody's listening to this, that they did the survey, thank you very much. One of my goals was I wanted to beat the per capita survey return that they did at Austin Public Library, which is where I used to work before I came here. And Austin had a survey return of I think 3.7 per thousand residents, which is actually really good.
That's really good. Yeah.
Yeah, we were over 5.
Oh my gosh.
So that tells you that. Well, but I think that also shows that Galvestonians give a crap
Yeah,
about
true.
their institutions, which I'm very thankful that they do. And I almost use a different word, but I don't want to leave that in their case they didn't make the edit. So we were thinking about it. So a lot of information comes through, but then we also looked at, I mentioned before about kind of libraries are new things now, and things that happened because of the pandemic, and that happened to libraries and happened, by libraries in response. Rusha, this was like an opportune time to take a step back, look at our services, look at what pivot services we created to accommodate changes in our society. And what is the best path forward for serving Galveston? So we're very excited about that. But then we're also looking at our facilities because, of course, now we know what we want to do. Now the question is where do we do? How do we do it? And do we have the right space to do it? I mentioned that the Moody Wing, which is the newest part of the library, is now 53 years old, well past the lifespan and life cycle of a commercial structure. And so we are really now well positioned to be thinking about what is the future space for the library and what kind of space do we need to be a library of the future for Galveston. We're not ready to, I think maybe by the time this podcast is edited and airing, we might have that out. I don't know how long your process is, but I will say that at this moment we are thinking of something really kind of big and iconic. We have what we call a generational opportunity. The Moody edition was a generational opportunity to create something big for the library and for Galveston. The original Rosenberg building, 1904, that was a generational opportunity. It's been 50 years. It's a new generation. So we are primed to do something, make generational change for the library and how the library serves the island, and something that it's not. I mentioned that the plan is a 5 to 20 year plan, but the result isn't a 5 to 20 year. We're looking at something for the next 50 to 100 years. Mm-hmm. We create and build something that would serve Galveston for the next 50 to 100 years. That's our hope. That's what we're looking to do because we have real estate. The library owns a block and a half. That entire block that the building sits on, plus the half a block behind Ashton Villa, that's all library owned. And so we have we're kind of a step ahead of the game to a lot of other institutions that are looking to expand or change their facilities footprint. We already have the land potentially to do that, as opposed to others that would have to go acquire land and then think about what to build. And so we're really excited about that. I think in the next few months, we're going to be bringing some things out for the public to see that hopefully wood.
Yeah, that's wood.
Fake wood.
It's fake wood. It's fake wood.
Hopefully it'll be something that excites and energizes the current generation of Galveston. And they recognize that this is we're poised with a great opportunity to build something truly transformational for the next 50 to 100 years for Galveston.
Well, of course, keeping the original 120-year-old building, right?
Certainly, we have no intention of knocking that down. There are moments. If anybody, when we're in a historic building, we have great historic preservation on this island. But anybody who manages or owns a historic building knows they are a pain in the tuchus to keep up. They're expensive. It's hard. But no, we have no plans. There are no plans.
Of course.
The only plans are to continue to care for and preserve the original for wing. Now I would say there's no plans to tear down the Moody Wing to start anew. Although I think that was discussed at one point. That was a potential path of doing something new would be to tear it down and start over on that side. But we could fundamentally change the Moody Wing, as part of this process.
Yeah.
That's what they get. One of the things that we suffer from in that half of the library is no natural light.
Oh yes,
Because that was a design aesthetic of the late 60s and 70s. Is you built these, because neo-modern buildings that had no windows and were all boxy, and the idea was, like at the time, especially with libraries, is as I mentioned before, light damages paper, so they're thinking, okay, let's just cut out all the natural light, but that's not good for the people.
No, it's not.
It's not good for the people. We need our vitamin D, so you're seeing some really amazing, library designs coming out that are incorporating a lot of natural light in various ways. And there's design things you can do without making a glass building, but you can create things that draw that light in and then disperse it around the building to create open, airy, spaces that people want to be in. And I think that's something that perhaps the Rosenberg Library suffers from a little bit, is, especially in the Moody Wing, is that aesthetically it's not a place that people necessarily want to be in. It's not, the old wing, obviously there's the historic charm of the 1904 building, has a lot of attention, and I think it draws people in there. But the Moody Wing, it's function. It's all function.
Yeah.
And it's serving well. I mean, it is functioning well, but it doesn't promote people wanting to come and stay and hang out and do things. And I think a big part of that is it's dark and dismal.
Yeah.
Because that was the design aesthetic of that time. Now's a good time to change that.
Yeah.
And then I can have a window. I don't have a window in my office. I call it my sensory deprivation chamber.
Nothing but artificial light.
So very excited about the future.
Yeah. I want to kind of talk about you for a minute. So
okay.
You're an author of a couple books, or one or two books. How many books have you written?
Four
books?
And I'm under contract for my fifth.
Okay. So tell us about the books that you have out.
Okay. A little bit. So I'll backed up a little bit since I get a chance to talk about me a little bit. Just to mention that, I run a library, but I'm a historian by trade and training. And so I've always done my history of work in public libraries. The first book I did was called Austin's First Cookbook. And it was a book that came out of an exhibit I curated at the Austin History Center about 19th century foodways in Austin. And it was, that exhibit was all kind of look at, the whole foodways and how food got to places, how people got to food, what they ate and what they grew and whatnot. And in that exhibit, I uncovered a copy of a book. It was called Our Home Cookbook, published by the Cumberland Presbyterian Church in Austin, Texas. And it was published in 1891. And I discovered that, to the best of my knowledge, it was the very first cookbook ever published in the city of Austin, and the second cookbook published in the state of Texas. And I thought, amazing. But our copy was falling apart. It was in many, many pieces. I said, this would be great to share with the world as a reprint. But I didn't want to just reprint it. I wanted to use that reprint as a foil to talk about the history of Austin Foodways, the history of cookbooks, and why we do cookbooks, why this cookbook existed. A little bit of history of the women who submitted recipes, because it was one of the few early cookbooks where the recipes were signed. So that was the book. So it's a story of that cookbook and kind of the food scene in Austin in 1891 that led to the creation of that cookbook. And then I even took a few recipes and tried to update them to modern tastes and stuff, and used my two teenage children at the time as my guinea pigs, as my test kitchen guinea pigs, just because I knew they would be completely honest with me, as most teenage children are with their parents. For those who have teenage children, you learn that. So,
what was the best recipe?
There is a recipe in there for something that's called dressed eggs.
Dressed eggs.
Dressed eggs. So, and the best way I can describe it is, think of deviled eggs, but up to notch or two. And I'm saying deviled eggs is my kryptonite. I could eat you put a platter of 24 in front of me, I can eat the whole thing. And then future me would then regret that decision. But I loved it. But these dressed eggs, and the key is it doesn't use a cream in the egg yolk mixture. It's butter.
Oh, okay.
And then they're baked.
Oh my gosh.
And then served cold.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
So yeah.
That sounds delicious.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I still make them.
Oh
those
my
days.
god.
So that's one of my, like, if I'm bringing something to a potluck or something, that's one of my go-to, potluck recipes. Just I love these eggs. So
And then the next book?
so the next book, it was the first part. I did 2 books with the Dallas Stars and an organization that I now head called the Texas Hockey History Society. So I'm a sports historian. I've always done a lot of sports, and I've done journal articles and stuff about minor league hockey in Texas, but also Lamar Hunt, who's still to this day the only person inducted into 3 different sports halls of fame. He's in the football, tennis, and soccer
Oh my
halls
gosh.
of fame because of his role as starting, soccer, football, and tennis leagues in the country. So I did a book. It's called Texas on Ice: Early Strides to Pro Hockey. It's really kind of a coffee table book, and I did it with 2 other guys in Dallas, and it was a book. It's not something that's widely available. It was published by Brown Books in Dallas, but it was done as a giveaway to Dallas Stars season ticket holders.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
That is
and
really cool.
And it was really just kind of telling the early story of development of ice sports in Texas up until the very first pro teams that played in Texas in the 1941-42 season. There was a team in Dallas and a team in Fort Worth in the American Hockey Association. And then in between the 2 hockey books, I did a book on, it was one of the Arcadia Images of America series books on historic movie houses of Austin. And also from an exhibit I curated in Austin about the old movie theaters and the kind of the development of and change of movie exhibition business in Austin. And then I did a second hockey book with the Stars group. It was called Texas on Ice: Pro Strides to the Stars. And so it told the story of the post-war World War II up until the arrival of the Dallas Stars in Dallas as the first NHL team in the state. But I can say this: so the book I'm under contract with, I'm writing with a friend under contract with Texas A&M University Press, and it's a narrative history of ice hockey in Texas from the first organized game in 1925 to present day.
Where was that?
San Antonio?
San Antonio.
San Antonio, at the Crystal Palace Ice Rink, which was built across Myrtle Street from San Pedro Springs Park, which is the oldest park in the state. So it's kind of fitting that the first ice rink wasn't the first ice skating, because there's I found news stories and evidence of, in when winters used to be colder, although we've had a couple cold ones recently, but lakes and things like, there's news stories of the Trinity River freezing over in Dallas, and then people going out with ice skates and skating on the Trinity River, and a lake freezing in Waco in the 1890s, and people ice skating there. And there's a great oral history from the son of the founder of Lamb's Candies in Austin. He remembered in the 1870s of a lake, like a little neighborhood pond, I guess, more than a lake, that would freeze over in the winters, and they would go out and try to skate on it and play shinny, which is like a precursor to hockey. So,
didn't you mention to me Galveston had a hockey team at one point?
So there's reports of that. In the 30s, there's from that time, that first organized game in 25 up until the first pro teams in 41, there was attempts off and on to form leagues, and there was like what we'd probably call semi-pro leagues or senior leagues that you sometimes see in other places. And in the mid to late 30s, there was what was called the South Texas Hockey League. This was after the Dallas ice rink burned down, and so they stopped skated because they didn't have ice rink after that. That ice rink burned in 33, and so they didn't have ice out there. So everything was south. It was San Antonio and Houston were the two cities that had rinks. But there's news stories in the Houston paper of a Galveston entrant in this league, and that the Galveston team, and it was mostly soldiers that were at Fort Crockett that had been at Fort Sam Houston and played on the Fort Sam Houston team in San Antonio. They got transferred or whatever to Fort Crockett, but they wanted to keep playing hockey. But they would come up to Houston and use the Houston rink. But I can't find any. There was nothing in the Galveston papers that mentioned any team that played. And when you actually get into league play and you see the news reports in the Houston and San Antonio papers, by the time league play started, there was no mention of a Galveston team playing. So but it's possible that some of the players on the Houston, they were the polar bears, that there was maybe some of those Galvestonians that they would come up to Houston and play. And of course, there's probably a lot of pickup games and stuff when they would try to get going. So that's all I could find on Galveston's connection.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
Ice hockey.
That's awesome.
So
Jay, did you have a couple questions? Oh yeah, turn that mic on.
Oh, good. I can turn and acknowledge.
Yes. So you were talking about how libraries used to be like subscription to free. Was there any people now have it open to being free, like free to go in, and then they would request items to be in there? Was libraries controlling what was coming through still, or were they just like, okay, you want this, let me just get it?
When it was under the subscription kind of model?
Under going from subscription to free, because I'm assuming there was an influx of people going into the libraries now.
Yeah. And I can't speak to specifics, but traditionally the way it's worked is the public could always request stuff, but there would usually be a librarian or the collection development department that would vet those requests and try to build a collection. So not necessarily everything that was requested, but even on the subscription model, not everything that was requested would eventually be bought. There would usually be a committee that would review the requests and make recommendations, usually hopefully based on some type of collecting philosophy. Right now libraries have what's called a collection development policy, and most libraries have one. The libraries that do their jobs well have one. We do at the Rosenberg, and it's on our website. If you go to the homepage, go to the bottom, click on policy. You can read our collection development policy so you know how we make our decisions about what we add to our collection. That's kind of the governing idea behind making those selections.
Another question is, at any given time, was there any gender or age restriction for people going to the library?
Libraries in general, or the Rosenberg in particular?
Let's do libraries in general and then Rosenberg.
Quick answer for libraries in general is yes. At different places, different times, there have been various restrictions on age and gender as well as race and whatnot. At the Rosenberg, I do not know, I could be wrong, but there's nothing that I have read or learned that had any restrictions for children or women in the library when it was open as a Rosenberg. Now, there might have been spaces within the library that they didn't allow children to go into. Maybe they had like a quiet reading room that was maybe just for adults, which I could certainly see that happening because libraries still kind of do that today. Not that they forbid, but they'll maybe more control the behavior in a space too, because they want to have a quiet space versus children are that's kind of loud. And if you go to like our children's department now, excepting when school's in session and we don't have homeschoolers in the library, the children's department's quiet. That's the only time the children's department is ever quiet, is when school's in session and we don't have homeschoolers at the library, because we do get homeschoolers that come in during the school day as well, and we're glad to have them. Now, there's always been an issue. If I can expand your question and talk about race in libraries, just because we've for so much of our history has been segregated, and the Rosenberg Library was no different than that. But we did have one of the, if not the first libraries for African Americans at what's now the Old Central Cultural Center. That was the Old Central High. And then so the Rosenberg had what was then called the Colored Branch, which was the terminology of the day.
And that is actually still written on the side of on the entrance to that on 27th and M.
And that was something that it was actually the community had requested the Rosenberg Library Association to open a branch there, and the Rosenberg Library Association agreed without any contention that I could tell in the minutes and stuff, and it was one of the very first libraries for African Americans in the state, and then. The Rosenberg, desegregated pretty quietly. I think like a lot of things in Galveston, it just kind of happened. And when that did, they no longer saw the need to maintain a second, location. And so all that just kind of got absorbed. If you go to the Rosenberg Library Museum's webpage and go to our Treasures of the Month, all the backstories, there's 2 or 3 really nice blog posts on there about some of those first librarians of the Colored Branch and the work that they did. So that's a great place if you want to learn more about that story.
Cool.
Anything else?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Awesome.
And then do you ever turn away any donation that is, I guess, being sent to you guys? To be added to a collection or an archive?
Was it monetary? No. But if it doesn't fit our collecting scope, we won't accept it. And we have 2 different kind of classes. And so a lot of people always want to bring us their books. And all books that are donated to the library go to their friends of the Rosenberg Library. And it is rare that we will add a donated book to our collection. And it's not to say that book is not worthy of a library or something we would want. The way libraries work today, purchase books to add to the collection, we don't just purchase the book, we purchase the catalog record and the spine label and all the stuff that goes to make it ready for someone to check out so that we don't have to do that. We have our acquisitions department for the whole library is one person. So that we have one person that places all the orders, checks the books in when they come from the vendor and gets them sent out for the different departments to put on the shelf. If that person had to also put a wrapper on the book, create the catalog record, upload the catalog record to our database, put the barcode on it, put the RFID, all that physical process that goes into making a book library ready, we would never get books on the shelf.
Yeah.
And so that's why, and most vendors who supply books to libraries, that's one of the services they offer that we pay a fee for. And so it's just much more efficient for us to just buy the book and get it on the shelf that way. And then the friends can take nice books and sell them. And the friends of the library do an amazing job supporting the Rosenberg. We get anywhere from $50,000 to $75,000 a year in direct financial support from them for mostly for collection development. So they sell books so that we can buy books. Which is kind of fitting, but they also support some of our programs. They usually give us money for our annual Galveston Reads program, as well as our summer reading for the children. And so that's kind of the book side. Then in terms of archival donations, again, if it fits our collecting scope, we will generally accept it. We don't usually turn those away. We do get people like there's the Texas Immigration Company land grants that come up on the market all the time, and we get many of them offered to us from time to time. And they're amazing because they have this great little map on the bottom of the land certificate that's a map of Galveston Bay. It's a really, really cool piece, but we've got dozens and dozens of them. We don't need more. Yeah. We just don't. We
Are they all generic? They're all the same?
Well, it's just that the only thing we would do, it's a land certificate basically. The difference would be who it was issued to, or if it was even issued to anybody. Maybe a signature on it might be important, but we just have so many because we have the records of one of the founders of the company, James Morgan, and so in the James Morgan papers we probably have a whole box of them to issue to various people, whatnot. So. So we try not to duplicate. Again, space is such a commodity in archival collections. So you have to be very mindful. We have to be mindful of, before we accept something, one of the questions we have to ask ourselves is, can we take care of this? Can we be a good steward of this collection or object that's being offered to us? And if the answer to that is no, then we're kind of ethically bound to say, well, no, we can't accept this because we won't be able to take care of it. And that's something that you see in archives. And then same thing with museum objects, is that we have to ask that same question. I will say that museum donations, so if it's like art or an artifact, the way our policy currently reads is those have to be approved by our board of directors before we can accept them. So we can tentatively accept something. We can say, okay, if it's our collecting scope, we can recommend it to the board for that the board approve our accession of this item, and then but it has to then go to a board vote at the next board meeting. And I don't know if the time the board hasn't accepted something, but
you never know.
Yeah. You're right, and so we just have to be careful of that. But again, we have to follow our collective policy and stuff like that. So
you good?
Yeah. That's answered my question.
Okay. I feel like now I'm watching tennis.
I know, right?
So.
Well, Mike, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you.
Really appreciate you. I appreciate everything the library has helped me with my research and live events that we've done over there in the past year or so. So thanks for everything, man. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Appreciate it, JR. Yeah. All right.
Awesome.
Next time we'll talk about Galveston's charter war.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.